I'm Dr. Dave Janda. Welcome back to the Insider Insight Show. I am honored to have back with me someone I consider a friend and someone who is one of the most patriotic and courageous individuals that I know. You know him and I know him as Charles Woods, who has been through a lot in his life. He has served our country in many different respects. But the way he's been serving our country since September 11th, 2012 is something that obviously he never anticipated, and it was based on a tragic and a horrible event, the death of his son, Ty Woods. You know, Charles served our country for many years as a lawyer, and he wants me to diminish this, but he was a judge, an administrative law judge that Charles will tell.
Low level.
Charles says a low-level judge, but I would take a low-level judge of Charles Wood's character more than the vast majority of judges that currently sit even on the Supreme Court. Our Supreme Court would do well by having a judge that with, as Charles will say, low-level experience on our Supreme Court. But Charles served as a phenomenal attorney and as an administrative judge, but his largest role in life has been as the father of an incredible patriot, Ty Woods, who was one of the 4 Americans who died, and I believe unnecessarily, in Benghazi. Last year, Charles came on our platform and laid it on the line as far as what Benghazi was all about, what happened, what didn't happen. His interview went viral, and it struck a nerve of more than thousands, more than hundreds of thousands, but millions of Americans. It actually led to several whistleblowers to come forward and speak about their knowledge base of what actually happened in Benghazi that night and what didn't happen and who allowed it to happen and who did not react. Those whistleblowers also did some videos with us, of which we have on our platform, one of which has now been removed by YouTube. And the reason is because they said there was a copyright problem because we mentioned the name of a movie. No video clips, no pictures, but just said the name of the movie, and that was the reason for that video to be removed.
Okay, then I will just say umpteen hours.
There you go.
Okay.
Umpteen hours, right. But I wanted to bring Charles back to talk about what's been happening over this past year. And also we want to start out with something to speak about the comparison of what happened or didn't happen in Benghazi and what happened recently when our embassy in Baghdad was attacked. It's my honor to welcome back Charles Woods. Charles, welcome back to the Insider Insight Show.
Thank you, Dr. Janda. It's a privilege to be here.
Charles, let's talk about the comparison and contrast between Benghazi and the attack on Baghdad, which recently occurred on New Year's Eve night of 2019.
Okay, I think that's really important to compare Obama's Benghazi attack on the American consulate in 2012 and Trump's response to the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Iran. For me personally, the most important comparison is this. If Trump had been president in 2012, my son, Navy SEAL Ty Woods, would still be alive, and his son, who was only a few days old when he left, would have a father. That's the most important comparison to me. But let's look at it as far as security of our country is concerned. It's been reported that within 13 hours, I guess it's okay to say that, the president had troops in the air. With Obama, umpteen hours later, he did not even have an airplane at the airport in Benghazi to pick up the bodies of the American heroes that were cooking in the sun at the Benghazi airport. That is no way to treat American heroes that laid down their lives to protect Americans at the U.S. consulate in Benghazi.
One thing that many people don't realize, Charles, is that because of the sacrifice of Ty and Glenn Doherty and the others that fought the terrorist attack, there are actually over 30 people, Americans,
Yes.
that were saved in that event.
Yes. One of those Americans actually called me afterwards, and we had a long talk. He told me basically what happened there, but he said, if it was not for your son, I would not be alive today. And that was one of the good things that happened as a result of Ty's sacrifice. Probably, to me, I knew that some things that were very good would happen as a result of what occurred in Benghazi. You know, we're told in Romans 8:28 that all things work towards good. If you love God, basically let him handle it. And I think that one of the good things that happened, Ty, he was willing to give his life for our country. He's very patriotic, and he would not have wanted to see our country turn into a socialist country like, well, Venezuela. But because of his death, it's very possible that that led to the crooked Hillary, to the 30,000 deleted emails, to the FBI report right before the election. That may have been enough votes to push it over the other side to prevent our country from becoming a socialist country. And Ty would have given his life for that. That's one of the good things that's happened.
You know, Charles, when we contrast and compare what happened in Baghdad versus what happened in Benghazi, the whistleblowers that you inspired through your presentation to come forward painted a picture that was very different than what I call the bought-off lamestream fake media painted and politicians painted. Do you believe that's a fair assessment?
Yeah, let me kind of explain that. I have in my hand right here, this is a letter to me addressed from Barack Obama. Let me read what he had to say. He said, U.S. forces could not arrive in time. Okay. Now, 13 hours later, he said there were not any forces that could have arrived. Okay? The whistleblowers that you're talking about, and actually I have to give you credit for their contacting me, because when we did that interview almost a year ago, we ended it, you said, hey, if there's any patriotic military people out there to honor Ty, please contact Ty's dad. And we've had several whistleblowers as a result of your making that statement who have blown the doors wide open on this. And now people know that immediately, these were people, they were in charge of rescue all over the world, 24 hours a day. There's a CENTCOM base in Florida, also one in Germany. These were the people that worked there. They had the firsthand knowledge. And immediately, as soon as this happened, so in other words, the decision, they knew there was going to be an attack. They thought it out. What's our response going to be? Immediately, they were told, do not rescue. And the reason given, because the State Department, not the Pentagon, under the direction of the Commander-in-Chief, but the State Department was in charge of this one. That was why there was no rescue. The reason given by so many people, including Hillary and Obama, was that there were not military assets immediately available. Now, that's totally contrary. One very patriotic congressman by the name of Jason Chaffetz immediately went over to Benghazi with General Ham, who was in charge of AFRICOM. And several times General Ham, Ted, told Congressman Chaffetz that he had military assets immediately available in the area, but he was never authorized to use them.
And that confirms what the whistleblower said as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, someone did get to General Ham, and when he finally testified, the same person, Jason Chaffetz, who is an honorable person, I have the highest respect for, when he was cross-examining General Ham, and this was several months later, after he changed his story. He said, "General Ham, I've talked to you on 3 different occasions, and on 3 different occasions you've given me 3 different stories." Apparently, someone was able to compromise his testimony from what he told Jason Chaffetz immediately after the attack.
So what the whistleblowers pointed out, and we have confirmation, is that they knew an attack was going to occur. When the attack occurred, a stand-down order was given.
Right.
And then after the attack occurred, when the whistleblowers that we've brought forward spoke, they said they were told not to trail, not to follow the terrorist.
Exactly.
Afterwards.
Okay. And this is really important, Dr. Janda. Okay. The other comparison between Obama's Benghazi and Trump's Benghazi in Iran was that Trump followed the person responsible and said, vaporize him. And they did.
And that was Qasem Soleimani.
Yes. 7 years later, there's only been 2 of the terrorists from Benghazi that have been tried, not in military courts, not according to battlefield justice, like Trump did, but it's taken 7 years. Last week, okay, we have one terrorist.
Katala was the first.
Well, no, that was Katala. That was
first.
A little over a year ago. This was Ali Imam, and he was sentenced to 19 years, which is nothing, okay, because he's going to be released early. And he was sentenced by the same liberal Obama-appointed judge that handed down a slap on the wrist to Katala a little over a year ago. And what I actually talked to the prosecuting attorney just a few days ago, and I was invited to give a statement at the sentencing of Katala.
A year ago.
A little over a year ago. Unfortunately, they didn't contact me this time, and I didn't, and I would have gone back.
Now, why do you believe they didn't contact you? Do you think it was because, Charles, what you said at the Katala sentencing was so powerful that they did not want Charles Woods to speak in public at a court hearing again with those powerful words you presented at the Katala sentencing?
Well, I had quite a few people that came up and thanked me and said it was a very powerful argument that I gave. I can't speculate, but I did make the mistake of publicly on different news shows, including yours, of saying that, making the analogy, if you have a bank robbery, the guy that drives the getaway car in the parking lot is just as responsible for murder as the person that pulls the gun, even if it's agreed beforehand that no shots are going to be fired. If it's reasonably foreseeable and you are associated with one of those people that conspires to commit a crime, you are guilty of murder. Okay? In both of these cases, they were found guilty of acts that constituted being a co-conspirator in furtherance of the crime that was committed. And in both cases, I criticized the first one and basically said a first-year law student would have a hard time losing this case. And quite frankly, I don't think I'm a good enough attorney to have lost the case. You have to be really, really good not to get a conviction for being an accessory to murder. And that means you would be guilty of murder as well. So possibly, I don't know, because I made that statement publicly on several news outlets, that may be why I was not invited back.
Charles, comparing and contrasting Benghazi versus Baghdad, you mentioned Soleimani.
Yes.
Soleimani was behind the Baghdad attack. It was documented. Ken Timmerman, a former military analyst, wrote a book. And here is what Ken Timmerman said. Soleimani has orchestrated attacks in everywhere from Lebanon to Thailand. The U.S. Department of Justice accuses him of trying to hire a Mexican drug cartel to blow up the Saudi ambassador to the United States while he was in Washington, D.C. My sources, meanwhile, say Soleimani was involved in an even more direct attack on the United States. Benghazi, the killing of Christopher Stevens, the ambassador, and the 3 other Americans. President Trump, in closing the loop on the perpetrator, the planner, the instigator, if you want to call it, of the Baghdad embassy attack, Soleimani, in my mind, Charles, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, was closing the loop over 7 years later on what happened in Benghazi. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
Okay, exactly. I've been told by multiple people in the know that the attack by the mortar, that was what killed Ty and the others on the roof. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's a very sophisticated machine, a mortar is. You have to have the exact coordinates, okay? And it takes very skilled military personnel. And I've been told by numerous people, including Ken Timmerman, that it was Iranian military people, highly skilled, that operated the mortar that killed Ty and the others. Okay. And, that may have been what he's been referencing to them. So, unfortunately, if there'd been an armed drone, which there may have been, because I've been told that those predators are always armed, mm-hmm. and even if they weren't armed, they could have seen it and it could have crashed it, mm-hmm. done it that way, which is what they do when they run out of armaments. They just crash it on the target, and that basically eliminates the mortar. They could have eliminated that mortar if they'd wanted to.
The night Soleimani was taken down, I sent you an email, and it went the following. I also sent it to the whistleblowers. I believe what happened tonight in Iraq, the killing of the death of Soleimani, was a direct result of your efforts in bringing the truth forward in Benghazi. Soleimani is dead tonight because of your courage. Ty and Glenn just sent their message to the world. It already is a safer, happier New Year. And you responded, Charles. You're absolutely right. Because of your interview, Nick and Josh and the other whistleblowers were able to come together. If you would like, you can share this text. As the father, and you said this earlier, but it bears repeating, as the father of Navy SEAL Ty Woods, who was killed at Benghazi, Libya, I would like to personally thank President Trump for his clear and decisive action to rescue the Americans under attack at our U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. If Donald Trump had been president on September 11, 2012, instead of Obama or Mrs. Clinton, who, as you mentioned, the State Department was in charge of, quote, running the show, if you will, in Benghazi.
And she would have to get permission to do that
right.
from the commander-in-chief, who normally would be in charge of the military.
And if Donald Trump had been president on September 11, 2012, instead of Obama or Mrs. Clinton, my son Ty would be alive today. Respectfully, Charles Woods, father of Navy SEAL Ty Woods. Charles, as you know, I sent your email to someone who I guess we could call someone very well known, who is formerly involved in military intelligence. I think that's a fair assessment, when you say.
Well, yeah, for various reasons, we probably should not mention his name, but 100% of the people listening to this broadcast would recognize that name if it was made public.
And here's what he said.